There hasn't been confidence in Armenian Fund for over a decade. We're being sabotaged and undermined on the ground in the diaspora. And we're dealing with infantile little children. Don't make the Azeris and the Turks happy.
What kind of support is the Armenian diaspora giving, like showing Armenians of Artsakh? And there are views that the diaspora is passive for donating money to during those days, and they are transferring more initiatives to individuals. What you say in regard?
Well, look, I think we're thinking of diaspora raising money as the only means of assistance is passé. It's something that was the case in the past, but is no longer the way we build our relationship with the diaspora. What the diaspora did do during those very intense days of ethnic cleansing, when our people started arriving on our borders, it filled the gap that unavoidably existed with respect to the services the government was providing to those ethnically cleansed people. Imagine in a period of about between 4 and 5 days, 100,000 people crossed the border, and they were completely dispossessed of their properties. They were hungry, they were exhausted, they were scared, they needed care, they needed warmth, they needed food, they needed everything they can imagine. And the government really did do a remarkable job of handling that volume of people coming in such a short period of time. But again, the government can't handle everything. Even in the best of the countries, the government can't handle everything. So nonprofit organizations, many of which, if not most of which, have diasporan roots, have diasporan funding, have diasporan management, stepped in and filled that void. So the diaspora was present. I know we can always, and we always should, strive for more involvement and more engagement, but I do want to give credit to those organizations that were there on the ground. Just 2 days ago, I was visiting an organization called the Kitchen of the World, Central Kitchen of the World, something to that respect, and it's basically a traveling food bank kitchen kind of a concept, where this organization in a very short period of time responds to a crisis, goes there, sets up a hot food center, and then provides its services to those that need it, right? And they came to Armenia, and they partnered up with the Armenian General Benevolent Union, AGBU, and they conducted a very impressive operation of providing hot food to the Artsakhis.
They are diasporan Armenians?
No, they're not Armenian. They're non-Armenians, but the organization which was instrumental in them coming in, and which partnered up with them and provided the local infrastructure for making it possible, was AGBU, which is a diasporan organization. I know it's present in Armenia, but nonetheless, it's very much a diasporan organization. So in about a 30-day period, they provided over 300,000 meals, hot meals, to our people. So these types of undertakings are ongoing. They're very active, and the diaspora is active in that regard. Again, we can ask for more, we can strive for more, but we can't say that diaspora did nothing.
The diasporan's confidence in Hayastan All-Armenian Fund has also decreased, as you know. Perhaps the reason is 2020, as you said already. Hayastan All-Armenian Fund initiated We Are Our Borders. Everything is for Artsakh fundraiser. Given that leaders of government are on the board of the trustees of Armenian Fund, and given that estimated $100 million from the fund was allocated to the government budget, and given that the budget is source of government employee bonuses, police forces, and Snoop Dogg concert, for example, you have major trust issue among the people who has donated back then. How do you address those people? Why is the trust broken?
Look, first of all, I'm not a member of the board of the Hayastan Fund. I'm not on the executive. I'm not the executive director.
The head of government are.
Right. There are people who do that, and I think ultimately the question should be given to them. But I don't agree with the whole assessment of, well, you know, there's a Snoop Dogg concert, that's why people have lost their trust, or even that the 2020 war was the cause that there was a decline in the level of trust for Armenian Fund. I'll be honest with you. There hasn't been confidence in Armenian Fund for over a decade. If you look at the money raised in the last 20 years, you will see a very certain decline in the amount of money being raised for Armenian Fund in the last 15 years. It's clear. People weren't donating because Armenia was known as a corrupt country. People weren't donating because they didn't believe that their money would be used properly. People weren't donating because they were getting tired of donating to projects which the government should be funding, like roads and pipeline, water mains and construction of schools and construction of kindergartens. That's my position. The government should be funding those things. Any project that All Armenia Fund undertakes, to the extent it will undertake in the future, should be a strategic project, a project that has strategic value, a project that the government can't otherwise handle. So bonuses and all that, those are all excuses. Those are all silly explanations. The money was raised, and the money that made so much controversial noise after or during the war and after the noise was raised for a specific reason. It was raised because people wanted to donate money, people wanted to financially participate in the defense of Artsakh and Armenia. Mm-hmm. And that money ended up where it should end up, the place where the defense of Armenia and Artsakh was being funded from, which is the budget of the Republic of Armenia. So 2.5, 3 years later, we're still hearing these silly questions about what happened. There's no audit. First of all, there was an audit. People can go on Armenian Fund's website and check the audit. People may not be happy about the audit, but that's a different issue. But there is an audit. Secondly, again, this issue of during an existential war for the Armenian nation, $120 million being raised for that war in the diaspora, even the mere fact that we're talking about the $120 million, so diaspora could only raise $120 million at the moment of existential threat for Artsakh and Armenia. Those people who very deliberately and intentionally keep this issue current, although it's not, don't understand how much damage they're doing to diaspora's perception in Armenia. Because everywhere where I go and I try to do things for the diaspora, with the diaspora in Armenia, I'm being confronted with this issue. They're saying, listen, they raised $120 million during our existential moment. And to this day, they won't leave the issue alone. How do you expect us to take them seriously? This is the question that I'm being asked in Armenia. And this is a big problem because it shows an incredible level of distrust in Armenia towards the diaspora. This conversation has to stop. It's 3 years. Everyone knows where the money went. Everyone knows what the intention of the money was. And keeping this up isn't going to solve anything.
Zareh Sinanyan, your job is to unify. What are you doing to unify? You have an important role, aid and bridge to the homeland. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to bring together and unify all segments of diaspora, including the opposition, which is also includes most part of the largest organizations in diaspora. How is the Diaspora Commissioner working to bring them together?
Yeah. Well, look. The concept of unity is a utopian concept. It has never existed. It never will. What we can strive for, what we can aim for, is to create such conditions where those that want to be constructive, those that want to positively participate, have the means and have the venues of doing it. That's what we do. We provide opportunities. We provide direction. And we provide cooperation for those individuals and organizations in the diaspora to be able to do so. Now, a program like Igor's is meant to open doors for, again, for those diasporans that want to put their skills and their professionalism to use for the Armenian government, for the improvement of the government, for the change in the government. A program like the Young Ambassadors, Diaspora Young Ambassadors, is meant to engage those active young people in the communities who want to be productive, to better understand Armenia, to better understand Armenia's needs, and then go back and continue their work in the communities and be productive there. So our goal, and our realistic goal, is to open doors, to extend hands to those people that are willing to shake that hand. Now, you alluded to organizations that are maybe in opposition and are the biggest ones. Look, I know who you're talking about. Everyone understands who you're talking about. Those organizations choose to act a certain way. They choose to. They're commanded to. They're literally ordered to act a certain way, which is very destructive. And it's being viewed as such in Armenia. The people in Armenia, the overwhelming majority, are very unhappy about the way those organizations are acting. They're very angry because the way they act, they're undermining our statehood. They think they're attacking the government. The government was elected by the people of Armenia. They've spoken several times. And every time they've condemned those forces with their votes. And when they attack Armenia, or they attack Armenia's government, they're undermining our statehood. So that's a big problem. Now, we see this happening on a daily level. Every day, in some way, in some instance, on some program, we're being sabotaged and undermined on the ground in the diaspora. And even with that sabotage and that undermining, we continue working. We're fine because there are enough well-meaning, patriotic people in the diaspora that do not fall for that propaganda. So our doors are open. Whatever we do, we always include those forces, those individuals. We always invite them to everything that we do, knowing that they're not going to come. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I was at a budget hearing maybe 3 months ago. It was the preliminary hearing. It was actually the budget hearing for last year's budget. We had to report on how well we're doing with last year's budget. And someone said, well, why weren't some individuals from certain organizations that you were alluding to present at the last year's World Summit? And I said, well, I got to ask you, why weren't they present? Because I invited them, I invited you. And you know what the response was? The parliament member lady from a certain political party said, oh, you invited us because you knew we wouldn't come. It's a kindergarten. I mean, we're dealing with infantile little children here. So we will continue dealing even with the infantile little children because that's the responsible thing to do, because that's the way we operate. We extend our hand. We try to work with them. Anytime there's a positive response, we're happy about it because we're in a constructive mode. If there isn't, we're still going to continue working.
You mentioned Igor's also Young Ambassadors program, but certain Armenians from diaspora have been denied access to Armenia. You know, I think all of them. Does this concern you, and are you taking any steps in addressing this issue?
When the issue arose, I addressed it. My opinion was taken into consideration, but ultimately didn't change the result. Am I concerned about it? I'm not concerned about it. I don't think it really changes anything. I do have an uneasy feeling about any Armenian being denied access to Armenia, any ethnic Armenian. If people have committed a crime against any kind of crime, they should, if they want to come here, they should come here and they should be charged with it. They should be arrested, they should be charged with it and held responsible. But the decision was made without my presence, and it is what it is at this point. I do want to call upon those same, again, individuals and forces to act responsibly. act responsibly. Those types of childish physical attacks that the Armenian ambassador in the US was subjected to, the type of harassment and attacks that the shameless people subjected me to, despite in the enormous amount of support they've gotten from me over decades. Just they don't lead to anything. They attacking the prime minister's cortege, throwing eggs at the Armenian flag, at the Armenian car, ambushing the prime minister's delegation in a hotel and making a scene. Doesn't do anything productive. I'll tell you, certainly doesn't help their cause, doesn't make them any popular. It doesn't make no rational person thinks that that's commendable. They did a good job. No one. This last episode with the with the Armenian ambassador in Canada being blocked, they made a mockery of themselves. The ambassador came out to be a hero, and they came out to be saboteurs again. So be responsible. Act like adults. Don't flaunt your hostility towards Armenia so much. Don't make the Azeris and the Turks happy. It just doesn't work. It doesn't lead to anything productive.